Yeah, I think you said earlier on off the show, it's because for anybody, you said it's a terrible society if you can't go for a walk on Christmas Day and enjoy it, but unfortunately, these are the times we're in, and you've just got to be careful in certain places you go and be aware around you. I always think around your space. I go to London a lot, Mick, and the one thing you do in London is you're very aware of your space because you're that crowded, but your eyes are everywhere. That's probably why it takes me about a day to get into it. But there's certainly places. Now, I think that's probably what we miss thinking, Mick, is that people don't realise there is places local that are, you'd have to have your wits about if you're walking about. My friend over the Christmas, I must have got 3 texts of people who've been burgled, Mick, and they're not burgling no more. Do you know what they're doing? They're walking up to the houses and they're saying, give us your car keys. Literally, give us your car keys. They're not bothered about police come in, they just stood there, balak or whatever, and they're saying, give me your car keys. And the people are looking out of the window and other than risk their own safety, they're throwing them the car keys and they're driving off. That would be unheard of 20, 30 years ago. Unheard of. Burglaries were coming in when you couldn't hear anything and they were trying to do it, you might hear this. They are brazenly not bothered. No one gives it. So if you watch the society we're in, Mick, you are going to have your wits about you. You know what I mean? You are. I know, and you just said to me, I'll never change. Well, then, I don't know what the advice on that one is. Because, I'm a big lad and I think there's some areas I won't walk on my own. I don't know about Joe, you're younger than us, Joe. Is there any areas where you think...
Well, certainly some, isn't there? But in general, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because it is potluck as well. You were in Leeds City Centre, weren't you?
No, I was on the way to Leeds from Bradford. Stanley.
Yeah, well, I'm not frequent to Stanley that much.
Well,
so
no, I'm not picking out. We can't pick out Stanley as a.
I'm not.
It's a
I'm
lovely
saying
place.
I don't know.
It's a lovely place. I just think everywhere you've just got to be on. You've got to have your guard about you. You've got to have your wits about you.
But then in Mick's circumstance, what do you do? Someone's just pulled up in a car and just.
My argument, and I said this to someone the other day, is where's the world going? Where's society going? Where if somebody who decides I want to walk to work or I want to walk here, can't walk there without a car pulling up, or on the occasion after the grand final back in 2019 where they pulled a knife out and I had my phone and personal possessions.
But what areas were you there? I don't know where you were.
That was in Manchester after the grand final. Near Cornbrook, I think it was called.
We walk Trafford, we literally park as close as we can, and I will only walk, Joe will be aware of this, because he's been with me when we've done it, I will only walk in the crowds and come back in the car, and I'm a streetwise lad, Mick, and I tell you now,
I know.
I do not leave that crowd at Old Trafford. And you know what, I'm sorry for putting in, it frustrates me a little bit that people are not aware of that. I wouldn't want to be with somebody who's not aware of certain areas when you're walking. If you hear some crowd, when you have sounds, I actually walk places like we do when we go there. I went to a football match, I'll not mention where, about a year ago, and we had me and my mate had 2 different opinions on it. He were walking one way and he didn't see a thing. Total big chest walking, and I'm like, mate, be careful. Away fans come down there, and I saw them coming. He had no idea and wasn't bothered. For me, I'm like, oh my God, I'd rather cross the road, walk that way. But to him it was, what's the matter with you? And then when he got, no offence, but when does something happen, I just sit there and let him go, mate, are you kidding me? I've been around you. I've watched exactly how you don't even think about things like that. I do.
So, as you can tell, Mick is a barrel of laughs going out to different places. I mean, you're walking around, he's got eyes everywhere, you're having brilliant conversation. Because he's that stressed out about the surroundings.
I do, because
there's levels to it. I think Dad's one end.
Because of my past environment, I've been brought up, we were brought up doing all sorts as kids, you go everywhere, but I could always walk in I used to say at the nightclub, I could walk in a nightclub and say, be careful there, watch that. And people they'll say, Craig can do it, I can do the room in a second, I can scan and go. I just think it's common sense and being alert. There's no defence on what people have done to you. And it's their fault, not yours. Absolutely their fault. But my advice is just be more aware. I once dropped you off at, I can't remember, years ago. You said, can you give me a lift? And I said, I'll give you a lift. And I think you were with train station, wherever. Because I'd seen you on, it was at roughest areas. I can't remember where we're at from show at Yorkshire Radio. And I saw you there with your bag and I was like, Mick. I can remember actually cracking a joke to you saying, Mick, I'll take you, just ask me and I'll take you to the train station. You can't be stood there at that time of night. I don't think you did see it. I think you were just like, well, so what? That's the way it is.
I think listen. There's nothing wrong in my outlook being I want to see the good in everything.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong at all. Perhaps, yes, in hindsight, Christmas Day, should you be walking on your own? Should you be walking on Stanley bypass? Should you be walking to Leeds? Probably people would say, Christmas Day, you're mad, Mick. But to me, it's like I was literally keeping myself occupied and going out for a walk.
That's fantastic, and I get you. And you're right, Mick. What a society if we can't do that. But again, all I asked as a bit of advice for anybody is just have your wits about you these days. I think you've got to have your wits about you. They reckon in some place in London, what is it? Is it so many every day? People are walking out of restaurants.
I don't have any stats.
Yeah, well, in areas now, it's every day. So you've got to be aware. I know I was laughing actually, not laughing, but they had the guy who was just being arrested in Romania. What's he called? Andrew Tate.
Let's not.
We're not going to go into him. But he's.
We'll get cancelled before we even.
No. This is just a thing on it, and it was weird. He got asked about a month ago. The most violent. He goes to a lot of places, and they said, "What?" And he's from England originally. I think he's from Birmingham. Luton. And he said, England is the most violent place in the world. Fact. Go get the stats. It is now the most. But it's always been.
He said London.
Whatever.
Not England. England in general is pretty safe.
We always historically said South Africa. Then you might have said what in America, Joe, New York at one time. I think until he cleaned it all up, didn't he? But New York, Jack City and all that were bad. And then you say Brazil has been areas when they went World Cup years ago. They were like, do not walk down the streets. I think Chris Kamara famously chased Robbie, didn't he? I think somebody tried to rob his bag and he got advised just to let him have it and he didn't. He went and... But I think that's, unfortunately, mate, we out going back onto rugby. That's just the way it is. Let's hope these young men like Joe, and the police get back on the bobbies. Do you know when I was a kid, Mick?
You mean...
As what?
We're not one of the most violent nations in the world.
Right. Well, there you go. Sam might get some stats. Put it in, Sam. That'll be interesting. Google what is... Do you know when we were kids, Mick, and people talk about old school? And I'm sure people who watch this will agree with me. We used to have the bobbies on the bike. Can you remember the bob? Would you be of that age where you saw policemen on bike?
You see them now on the bike.
Oh, do they still do it?
Yeah.
You live in a tiny little... You live in a tiny town away from...
But do you know what, Mick? As soon as you see him...
I was walking in Bridlington before Christmas and... I saw Bobby on a bike. I did look at him and think that's a bit old school, but then it kind of makes sense.
Do you know what, Mick? Honestly, you'd be playing...
Bridlington, a little seaside town.
You'd be playing, Mick, as a kid, and as soon as you saw that Bobby's bike ride, you just instantly stop what you're doing. Whether you're doing it wrong or not, you'd stop. And the respect you'd have, you wouldn't dare say a word. In fact, the hiding you'd get off mum and dad if that Bobby ever went back to your house, because he knew who you were. It's like Dennis and Beryl's lad. It's great, That's how they knew you. That's what they've tried to get back a bit of personalising it. But the respect, I don't think that's there anymore, is it? You know what I mean?
No. People are getting very brazen, and
that's for sure. Yeah.
But like I say, the people that did me over on Christmas Day, they've abandoned the car. The police have found the car. It's now an ongoing investigation. Am I gonna get any closure on it? Probably not. Because, again, it's quite a serious crime in the police eyes. Assault and robbery. If they get caught, it will go to court and a jury. I do want to say thank you to one gentleman who saw this happening. Because the minute I started getting kicked and punched, I'm not saying I'm an easy target, but the amount of times that I've been in similar situations where I've been mugged and assaulted, I always realise if you go into the middle of the road, there's going to be traffic coming either way, even though it's Christmas Day and it was relatively quiet. Thank the Lord, a car was coming on the opposite way. He's put his brakes on, got out, tried to defend me, and again, like a pack of cowards they've all jumped back in the car and drove off. But there's some good people in the world.
Brilliant, and that's what mate.
And I'll tell you what, because it's happened so many times, that's not going to deter me from still going out and walking. You might think I'm mad. People say, but no. Anyway, it is the full 80 minutes, and that was a bit...
Well, you haven't put what I actually text you when I heard. I said, I will buy you an electric bike.
I saw it, yes.
And if you accept the offer, I will get you an electric bike. that you've never had a better offer in your life. I will get you an electric bike. You're off. And when you at least you're moving and you're getting the exercise.
I'm accepting the offer of an electric bike. Craig.
There you go.
There we go.
Sam, did you get the answer?
It's too hard. There's loads of different ones.
Right.
It's definitely the worst comment he's made. That ridiculous.
It's not in top 20. Fantastic. We still got.
He's clueless.
You might be right. It might have been City in London.
Look, there's people watching this thinking, "Where's the rugby league content?" The rugby league content is coming. I don't know where to start, to be honest, Craig, because we're doing this old school. Nothing in front of us. Nothing scripted. It's interesting. Since the last show that I did, we've obviously had the news that West Wales Raiders have bit the bullet and are going to reassess, so they're not going to be in League One for next year. Interestingly, on that, they had the call, the RFL did, with the clubs, and obviously they were told, this is what's happening. A number of the League One clubs who I've spoken to, Mark Sawyer at Dewsbury, for instance, times are hard, times are tough. And a lot of the clubs, what they're saying now is, because the central funding is peanuts, because the clubs, Craig, in the past, a League One club could have got over 100 grand with the add-ons. We know Newcastle, when they were in League One back in 2018, they were getting about 130, 140 grand. Now you've got League One clubs getting 16, 17,000 pounds. And a couple of the clubs have said, well, we might as well get nothing, because they've actually, because of the paperwork involved, going through this ROI, return on investment, and all the forms they've got to fill in, and all the documents, and all the evidence they've got to send into the RFL, they're saying, well, I can actually save a wage on a member of staff, and I'm only doing this by paying this out to get this back in return, sort of thing. So I know it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment, but when you actually realise what the clubs are actually getting from central funding,
do you think of crowds of 200 or 300? What do you think they should get? Do you think that the top should subsidise, as it has done for the last 20 years? Should it subsidise the full game in all areas? If you don't promote a business and you want to go...
Craig, the easy answer is, if you're going to do return on investment on Championship and League One clubs, you do it on the Super League clubs, because I'll tell you right here, right now, and this is only going off
I agree with you.
Data and governance, and this won't come as a surprise or a shock, because Bradford historically are a big club with a lapsed fan base, but Bradford beat 4 current Super League clubs on data and governance. So if we're putting all the clubs in a table, Bradford would get more money than 4 Super League clubs for that pillar. So you'd already see 4 Super League clubs missing out on a lot of money. And I think Widnes have beat 2 current Super League clubs. So this is what I'm trying to say. If we're going to be fair, and you're going to say, well, League One clubs, you've got 200-300, we're going to, go for you and take more money off you. Championship clubs, we're going to do it to you. You've got to do it to the Super League clubs, and that's the problem, Craig. It's not happened. It's not been a problem, Mick.
It's
not been a fair level playing field.
It's not a problem. I'll explain this to you.
No, but it hasn't been a level playing field.
I'll explain this to you.
If you're going to do return on investment, for the 2 divisions below the Super League, you do it for the Super League.
Well, I'll tell you
because
now.
That's the problem.
The return on investment.
Because that's the problem, Craig. Because that's the problem. You've allowed the Super League clubs to take the money. 4 clubs, IMG have said, historically, they have not spent the full cap. They have devalued the product, which has ultimately made the game stale, which has ultimately seen fans disappear, which has seen
I agree with you.
Figures drop off, which has seen viewing figures. Listen, this is not an attack on Super League. I'm just saying, if the game had some leadership and some forward thinking and an actual blueprint for growth, you'd put all the clubs in. It wouldn't have taken this long, where you've had League One and Championship clubs under this ROI, return on investment scheme, for 5-6 years, and it's only going to be next year, when this grading comes in, that the Super League clubs are going to realise, hang on a second, look how tough this is. We're actually being graded on our crowds. We're being graded on our data and governance, exactly like the Championship and League One clubs have.
Right, Mick, I'm gonna challenge you. If we did it, what's the matter?
Go, just checking.
On what?
Just got a text. Apology.
Sam, your producer, next time he does that, get him off the show. He's just stopped in mid-flow and just gone.
The amount of times you sit there
With
on
Bandit.
your phone.
Right, you ready? So,
Ridiculous.
I would say, if we did all honest, Mick, and we put the top 5, probably 3, 4 clubs.
There's 4 clubs. There's
No,
4,
no, let me tell
there's
you.
4 A
when,
clubs.
When Sky sit there, and I'm the Sky deal, and I'm now IMG because it'll be joint, and we're going to broker the deal. When you go and present something to get business, you bring your best assets to come up. If I'm going to come and get business and acquire a new deal off these people, my presentation will be based on potentially 4 clubs, like you said. That's it. You probably probably say Leeds about 50 times in your presentation, because they're the flag bearer, you'd say, with the stadium, with the crowd base. We did this some other day. We think Leeds are the 3rd or the top 3 club in the world. So Super League are very lucky to have a top 3 club on anything, turnover, corporate, sponsor, marketing in the world. We're lucky. So I'm going to meet them. Leeds are probably the one. Then you might put Saints because of how good they are and how they run the club and how they think. Then you've got Wigan, historically Warrington, yeah? You're right, probably 3 or 4 clubs in Super League might not get a mention in that Super League. What I would say is the whole derby would be mentioned. You'd mention that non-stop. You'd say,
Craig, I'm not attacking the old.
No, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. You don't let me finish. So then you go right down to what you're doing there is, and this is where it had to stop. Something had to be done because of the way Leeds do that much for their game. I think they do the Butlins, or 1,000 kids come play at this massive rugby league show. They're in the community everywhere. You've got clubs who are everywhere and trying the best to make their club the biggest in the world. Then you've got clubs in Super League and in Champions just taking the money historically, spending it on players, as you know, not a thing into community, not a thing into marketing, not a thing into anything else other than I'll use that to pay for players. They offer nothing to the competition because they're not building a business. What you're saying is true, but it had to happen eventually. Leeds Rhinos and the big clubs have got to stop and say, this stops now. We cannot subsidise the full game. You're selling 12, 14 games a year and you're all getting the money over the last 10 years on us. Like it's true, I'm telling you, it's actually true. If you look at, I'll give you both a thing here. Name your top 5 games, and you'll go Championship, so I know what you'll do. Name your top 5 games next year if I ask you what you'd like to watch. So you're on Sky, it's Friday night, you've got your food ordered, you've got your glass of wine. What's the appetizer?
Well, Sky don't show Championship games.
Premier, BBC. Tell me what your appetizer is next year, where you think it'll get the most views and you can't wait to watch it.
Are you talking?
Forget about a grand final.
Because everybody is going to answer this differently based on emotion.
I get you. But tell me, as a take away your supporting hat on and when you support your thing, what's the games that get you buzzing?
The big games.
Go on then.
So already, off the top of my head, I want to see Toulouse versus Featherstone because, in my opinion, that's your top 2 in your Championship.
Yep.
Again, I'm going to look at this probably from a Championship point of view.
Yep.
Keighley Bradford for mine up there.
Yep. I love that. We're all looking forward to that one.
We know there's going to be 3,000-4,000 at Cougar
Like it.
Park, 4,000-5,000 at Odsall. They're playing at the Summer Bash as well. You might want to watch the Summer Bash one on a neutral ground in York on a Sunday evening, ground full. I'm going to say I like the Old Derby.
Yep.
So the Old Derby's in there for mine.
Yep.
I want to see St Helens against somebody who I think's really going to challenge them this year, and I'm going to put Huddersfield in there.
Got you.
And then Leeds versus Wigan.
Right, so you've probably got we've got Leeds, Wigan, and I don't know if Sam can write that down. We've got Leeds.
Ideally, I'd love to see a Doncaster Runsley or a league. I want to put a League One in there as well. But if I'm being honest, Craig, what I don't want to see is, we've still got the Loop fixtures next year, and God forbid if the Challenge Cup throws it up, we can't have a situation where we end up with Castle versus Huddersfield 4 or 5 times. You know, but look, I've distanced
Yeah, I like it off the cuff. Joe?
emotionally.
Yeah, you've got to go Bradford Keighley. That's going to be the game of the year, I think. And
Well, there'll be so much emotion in that Bradford Keighley game because
fans will be
the
at
way
it, everyone will be at
the
it.
way Keighley are building, you know, some might say they're, you know, getting up towards where Bradford currently are because of
Some
obviously
ex-Super League players going at it, things to prove. There's a lot of storylines in that game, isn't there, obviously. So I love that one. I think that's genuinely my number one. Number two, you've got to look at Leeds v Wigan. You've got to look at Saints v anybody, and you're 4-time champions. Any Saints game's got to be interesting to see who is going to compete against them. And then maybe maybe chucking a Lee in there if Lee start the season off well. See a Lee.
Listen, Lee Wigan would be tasty, yeah, 100%.
If Lee can replicate some of the success of last year, and we see Blake, we see a couple of others rock the show. Well, I think that would be. Oh, Blake's left now, isn't he?
No, he's still there.
No, is he still there?
Blake Austin's still there. Yeah.
No, Blake Ferguson.
Oh, Blake Ferguson. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And then he's
Ferguson's still there.
Yeah. So I think that they're my interesting ones.
So every single show, every single thing we mention usually is an angle, so a derby. So if Sky are asking for what fixture we want to get the money, based on that is derby's sell. You both agree? Bradford Keighley sounds exciting. You've mentioned Old Derby.
Old Derby next
we watched
year.
the Cumbrian Derby last year. That were quite exciting, even on a muddy pitch, and it got stuck into each other. Wigan Saints. I don't think anybody'd miss a Wigan Saints game. I think if you're a rugby league fan, you make a Wigan Saints back, switch the lights off and get yourself off.
Yeah.
Your problem is when they do the deal, there's probably 30, 40 games, Mick, which no one, even the anoraks of rugby league, have no interest in. And that's the problem for me with when the percentage the money make down is how do they get that money? I've always believed, in my opinion, you should go on what you're worth. I think if they did it on that, that's what I'd do. If you produce massive figures, if you produced massive community, massive growth, massive development, massive corporate, right, you should get more money. Unfortunately, I think they should have put a system in where somebody gets all that information, whichever league you're in, and that should dilute whether you get X amount or not. And they're trying to do it a bit now. It's what they're trying to do now, but they should have done it years ago. Because it is not fair for Leeds Rhinos and the ones who I'm not mentioning Leeds, sorry about everybody, Saints, Wigan, Warrington, whatever, Cass, Wakey, whatever. The ones who are putting it in deserve to get more. Why should you go and do a thing at Butlins, right? And you organise it for 3 days. And I've heard of people all over the country, this Butlins things, under 10s, under 11s, 12s. It's a fantastic concept. Leeds run it, or did historically run it every year for 10, 15 years. It gives the chance for players from all over the country to go play rugby league, and it's an absolute show. Why would you keep doing that if you're getting the same amount as a club who do not give a monkey's what they put in? Without mentioning it, why would you do it? Tell me any society where you'd want to do that. When there's 3 or 4 clubs who offer nothing, and they're not bothered about doing development, they're not bothered about doing... They're just taking the money and spending it on players.
But Craig, what I'm saying
agrees with Mick to an extent.
Yeah, what I'm saying, and it's only going to happen now IMG are in charge, for the last 5-6 years, whilst the Championship clubs and League One clubs have been perpetually getting squeezed by the RFL, it used to be 20%, then it went up to 30%, now it's at 50%. So 50% of your central funding is based on return on investment.
Yeah.
So that's for Championship and League One. Super League, they've had it cosy. Here you go.
Get it?
Here's your money, here's your money, here's your money. And like I say, IMG, historically 4 clubs have taken the pot and they've not put it in because they've underspent on the salary cap. That's why...
Do you think that's coming from the top end though, Mick? That's probably my point. Is Featherstone...
I think Gary Everington, because don't forget...
Or is it all just dripping down and the top are just giving it to... They're just giving it all the game?
Because Gary Everington always was one of the few who actually sided with the Championship and League One clubs. Gary Everington...
He's a lover of the game.
always stood up against Elston. Yeah. Leeds were one of the big clubs who realised this Robert Elston it's a joke. It's a farce. It's going to do more damage than good.
Do we need then, Mick, is what I'm hearing off IMG. I am hearing this. There will be a Champions League rugby league. There will be a Champions League concept. And when this, let me point to you here. When football first got mentioned, Champions League, I can remember watching Saturday with Rodney Marsh and them in the day, and the euphoria behind it was horrendous. Oh my God, you can't do this, it won't work. How are we going to play AC Milan on a Wednesday and play bloody Portsmouth on a Sunday? It's crazy. Well, they did make it work. It's now one of the most sought after sports in the world, if not the number one. It's going to be top 4 competitions of any type in the world, the Champions League. I'm telling you, Mick, get the comments 25 years ago. They said it's impossible. How can you go and play Real Madrid on a Tuesday night and then play a League Cup match? They've made it work. I think what we need, again, for the clubs that are putting it in, for the clubs that are developing themselves, for the clubs that are doing everything right, they probably need that. For them to expand more, do they need to be the Champions League where it might be in Dubai and they play Penrith? Do you know, like the World Club sort of thing, but they have a Champions League concept? Is society now mixed?
Listen,
is that elitism again? Is that elitism again? But if they created another, let's say top 5 clubs in this country get 1.7 billion, but they could play a Champions League over a month and 6 weeks and earn the same money because they play it in a stadium in Dubai or wherever, and they can earn the same money. The 1.7 can be earned in 6 weeks. Would you say that shouldn't be allowed to happen?
I'm all for something like that, which improves the footprint and media profile of the
That's
sport
still
of
not
rugby
disagreeing.
league.
You're still not disagreeing with Mick there, though. That still fits into what
We
Mick's
started
saying.
off, Craig,
Mick's issue isn't the top teams. Mick's issue is the bottom teams, the Super League, whichever position they're in. The bottom teams of spending of not using the money. That probably suits Mick's agenda, and then the bottom teams.
There's no agenda. I've always been somebody who, you know, as a socialist, I believe in equality and fairness. And what we've had for 5-6 years, we haven't had equality and fairness because we've had Championship and League One clubs having money taken off them, being penalised because of the crowds, because of the governance, because of the finance, because of the data, because of youth investment, while Super League clubs have been run far worse than some of these Championship and League One clubs, and they've still been given the same amount of money.
What's bringing the money in? Are we missing something here? What brings the money in?
What we're seeing now, Craig, with the grading is ROI. The grading is going to, as we did before, I don't want to keep repeating it, but the show we did before Christmas, the grading will mirror ROI. And we're going to see the Super League clubs now realise, oh, hang on a second, look how poor we're doing in this area.
But if it mirrors ROI, most of the Super League clubs still win quite easily. There's only 1 or 2 you can pick off that really do worse than most Champions League One clubs.
But the point I'm trying to say, Joe, is if this had come in at the same time, which was another reason why the split off from the RFL, because if the Elston situation hadn't have happened, then the RFL, still in control of the game, would have ROI'd everybody.
I get you, but my problem is, Mick, and this is what my thing is, and it's probably the same. They had to probably do the Champions League to service Man United, Liverpool at the time, because they were saying this comp's a bit stale. We're supplying all the money for the bottom 10 clubs because they don't offer nothing to the table. At that time, they've all improved, by the way. The Premier League money's allowed.
I've nothing against it.
Let me finish. The Premier League money's allowed Premier League to grow, and the stadiums. One thing I noticed in football, oh my God, the stadiums are fantastic. I mean, we used to go to old First Division. Apart from 3 stadiums, the rest were shitholes. So they did eventually, that money from what the big clubs brought in by the being Man United at that time, they got the deals and they shared it ultimately all together, and that allowed the others to grow. I would say that's what's supposed to happen in rugby league. Is that yes, you're going to get your top 4 or 5 clubs bringing in £25 million of Sky to be sorted out with everybody. So there's yours, there's yours, there's yours, there's yours. That's ultimately, let me tell you, Mick, straight, without being thingy. Without them top 4 clubs, no other clubs in the country can go to Sky. They won't even open door. They need to product.
I'm not disagreeing with that, Craig.
You need them.
He's not disagreeing with that.
All right. Well, you know what?
No,
disagreeing with
he's saying judge the other clubs because you've been judging Champ and Champ 1. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Right.
And
my thing to you is, the argument they would have, I'm sure, over the years is, oh my God, and this is why you're right, they split with Elston, is because they felt they were subsidising the full comp for 20 years. 4 clubs have felt they're subsidising the full rugby league game in our country on their backs. And they're having to give clubs money off what they consider that they're getting. If the clubs were off and they told the truth, they'd say, well, they can't get out. That's why when the Championship and Champ 1 have been offered to go on their own, away from Sky, away from Rugby League, get their own deal, what do? They never get a penny. 20 years, they've never had a penny.
Well, look, the point I was trying to say is...
No, just answer that. Answer that. When they've been offered, they've said, go and get your own deal, no problem. Don't take any more of our deal. We'll take all Sky money. Sky don't want Championship and Champ 1 on Sky. Go and get your own deal. What happens when they do that? They give it free for Premier or they play free play.
Well, I won't say free.
Have they ever got a penny off anybody else on broadcasting?
200 grand. They get 200 grand a year from Premier Sports.
To be split between the full Championship.
It's no longer called Premier Sports, but yeah, the Premier Sports. The current deal, which was done when it wasn't called Premier Sports.
So it's 200. That's 200 grand split between 24 clubs.
No, between the Championship clubs,
which is
14.
14. So work that out. 20 grand each.
No. They get so much money to market the Monday night games, which is why some clubs put that money into free travel, discounted tickets.
Listen, for me, if we can make, I'll put one to you like this, and you've just said you're a socialist.
But
I think Joe borders on that as well.
But what you've just said,
I think
Craig,
he's a man of the people. He's our Joe. Are you ready? If the Champions League happened like football, let me just put an instance to you. And Champions League in 3 years' time becomes bigger than Origin. Let's just say it happens, You can take a French club, they arrive there. Let's say Catalans arrive there. You take 3 English clubs, they take 3 Australian clubs. You might even have a Papua New Guinea, whatever. We have them. They're all there, and they play this Champions League format, And as like football happened, it suddenly went from 100 million to $1 billion industry. Then clubs go back in the Premier League, and these clubs now are global all over the world. They're massive. Super Real Madrid. These fixtures have enlightened the game and made it in billions. If 4 of our clubs went off and did that, and they became bigger clubs globally, so people are watching from all over the world because they can't believe they're watching it in Dubai and there's 20,000 people and it's absolutely unbelievable. And they come back to Super League, and next time they go to Sky deal, Sky go, wow, these are now global brands. We're going to have to push this money up because they're getting more figures. Would that be good for the game?
Of course it'd be good for the game. It'd be detrimental to probably the Super League. The NRL's stronger, a lot stronger. But it'd be detrimental. Well, it's not going to be called the Super League anymore because everything's getting rebranded. But the top tier over here probably would suffer on the back of it.
Well, I think that's what they're going to throw in. I think IMG will throw in a competition of that like, and it'll be a different...
But it needs NRL to agree to it.
Yes. I think that's what they'll be trying to get done, and I think IMG should have the power to at least get round the table, whereas historically, we don't get on table with them. There's something called what Nigel would work for. Do you work for the World Federation? What's it called? When he got paid all the money after he left.
The World Rugby League Federation. The World Rugby League Federation.
That was supposed to be the interpreting in between it, making that happen, but they didn't. They didn't have no power. We've always gone to table, and NRL have gone, take your chicken bones off table, you're not offering anything. So there's nothing to bid with. They say we've got our Origin. That's our super comp. We don't need anything. You throw at us. We're not bothered about World Club. We're not bothered about anything. We've got Origin. We've got our international game, and we've got our the number one. These in the NRL, the Origin. So we've had nothing to offer. I think IMG are going to try and get us on the dance floor, Mick, by saying why don't we do this super comp and bring it together.
I'll be honest. If you're an NRL club, you're probably rejecting it. I know you're talking about self-interest, but self-interest has governed the sport since 1895, and it's never going to change. I'd like to see it work. I just can't see it, sadly. Like you say, the NRL clubs are playing enough games as it is. You throw in Origin, mid-season tests, end-of-year tests. I just don't think there's the appetite there. I admire for what IMG are trying to do, but like I say, fundamentally going back to the first point, Westworld Raiders have gone. There's a number of League One clubs that are struggling. We know Whitehaven. There's another Championship club as well that we mentioned have asked them to take the players and the coaching staff 20%. I was going to say, when you speak to the chairman, and you actually understand what they're getting, you know, clubs in the Championship 4 are getting under £50,000 next year. So you're talking about Super League funding this game and keeping it all afloat. You know, clubs are getting less than £50,000. Some in the Championship are getting less than £50,000 because this is all on return on investment. And again, the point I wanted to say was, if return on investment was at Super League at 50%, you would probably only get a Warrington, a Wigan, a St Helens and a Leeds getting anywhere near the full lot. Heaven forbid.
They wouldn't get more. Mick, they'd get double the amount they get
Leeds
now.
would get treble. We're going to get treble.
You couldn't.
St Helens would get treble.
Well, why couldn't you do that then? If you're being fair, you've got to do that then. That's the counter.
That's exactly my point.
So because Bradford ticks so many boxes in the crowds and ticks so many boxes in the data.
Yeah, you should get paid more.
And Widnes, you know, the baseline is there.
Can't do that.
And the work down.
Can't do that.
But that is what the RFL have done.
The way
you do baseline.
That is what the RFL has done.
That's not what you call.
Yeah, but Craig, that is how it works.
That's not fair and equitable, mate. That's
how
the
it
You know what
works.
you're doing there, don't you? One of the worst things in business exercise, you're putting a block on it and you're saying that's where we can go to.
No, I'm just telling you now how it currently works. There is a line there. That is the maximum you can earn. If you don't tick the boxes, we go down.
So
the point I'm trying to say,
so you invest
for the Super League clubs, if this had come in and there weren't the split with Elston, the Super League clubs, there's your line, 1.7. I'll tell you now, you'd have your Salford down at the bottom, you'd have your Wakefield, your Castleford, you'd have your clubs all down here, and they wouldn't have been getting anywhere near 1.7.
That would destroy the sport, mate. That would generally destroy the sport, because no one would have any money then.
No, what it'd do is it'd make the clubs that are failing improve a lot quicker than what we're having to do now with IMG, where we're bringing in grading.
Your problem now is, and I think I can speak as well as most people.
You can't just say, there's your line.
I don't think they can ever drag them back. I think we've left it, and this is what I've said before. I don't think IMG realise you setting standards of a bar and telling them all to get there. I think a lot of it is too hard a task because of the detriment over the last 15 years, what they've allowed with the game. I watched a Boxing Day game at Leeds. I watched a New Year's Eve game at Featherstone. I think it was New Year's Day, whatever, Featherstone, Cass. And a good crowd at Fedcas, good crowd at Leeds. I think 9,000 Leeds, Fedcas, I don't know how many, maybe 4,000 or 5,000. Good atmosphere. What I do see is the Boxing Day fixture. And I made sure I watched another game. I watched 2014 Wakefield Leeds on YouTube, just so I made sure my eyes weren't deceiving me.
Is this Boxing Day game?
Yeah, Boxing Day. And I said this at the time to Joe and them on way home. I said historically, all the big stars played. You got to see some really big stars, and you got to see the new signings. And you get to see some great youngsters, the Watkins, the Bishops, Ben Jones Bishops at the time, young Liam Sutcliffe, young Stevie Ward. But you got a mixture of seeing Danny Maguire never missed many Boxing Day games. You'd see the best of the best. Then you'd see the new signings. I don't think we're anywhere near that at the moment, because people choose, maybe harder seasons, faster rugby, whatever. Another thing I noticed, and I'm going to challenge this, and people can comment on this. Go and watch a 2014-15 standard game, if you can do it. And then go and watch a modern day game now and tell me the difference. And I'm going to let you, without me putting my point across what I think, I'll let you, any educated fans, have a look. And I think I know the reason. I spoke to 2 coaches yesterday before we did the show. I think it's because the 6 again rule probably dilutes a bit of skill because you're playing tired. You get me? So if you do 2 or 3 back-to-back sixes, you're going to make, 20 tackles in space of 30 minutes. Are you going to be at the same level to put some skill on? No, you're probably absolutely gassed. So to then go and make a 30-metre break and show it, you know what I mean? We talked about the offloads. I watched this game. There must have been 10 or 15 offloads, Mick. Honestly, bang, bang. It was scary. I watched that on Boxing Day. I'd like to challenge how many offloads we got on Boxing Day.
I think that's because of what all sports are going through over the last 5 or 6 years. Data analytics, in the fact that they've seen the offloads don't bring as much as the eyes. That might pass the eye test, but it fails the actual analytics test of offload don't actually bring you that much in rugby most of the time. Some do. but most of the time you get knock-ons which completely ruin your set. You get mistakes.
You're saying completion.
That's as in all sports now. The NBA's every single sport's been changed. I think most sports have changed through analytics over the last 5 or 6 years. There's not many that you could bring up, and I think that's the reason why that there's so much emphasis put on analytics, safety, completion, all these other stats that a lot of coaches chuck out every week on. That's because this revolution of math that has been implemented.
Well, they're going to have to get to a stage what he did then. Pep Antler at Barcelona and Man City, second ban, Sam. So
I'm just doing a bit of business. I know I've been covering you recently. I know it's
ridiculous, isn't it, mate? He's probably the football, Mick. It's probably happened where Pep came along at Barcelona and said, right, on stats based, if you keep the ball, it's the best sign of defence. So keep the ball longer periods, it's the best sign of defence. Maybe Rugby League need to find our way, because they found a way of watching attractive football, even though it's not my goat. You know, I like to see people beat somebody, but I think Rugby League need to find a brand, which I suppose, if we all talk about it, and I've said this before on the show, if Mike Rush was totally dependent on changing the rules, and please don't put this as an headline, I don't want Mike Rush getting monk on me, please, there's 2 or 3 journalists do it, please don't do it again, is if Rushy was to do with the committee of bringing the 6 again because of what he knew we had, Saints are the best, have done the best, he's probably won 5 or 6 trophies for Saints on trot alone, him and his coaches, by analysing what they wanted to make the game faster and what they knew they got. They knew they'd got the fastest pack, the fittest players, and everything were in their favour to bring a 6 again in. I asked the question yesterday to a top official, who got the vote on the 6 again? Because I've just watched 2014, it suited Leeds. Offload, bang, support, bang. Danny Maguire hit 2 20-yard passes cut out, bang. It was like watching Globetrotters. And the speed, the attack was sensational. John Bastin queried it and said, well, I don't think the defence are as good as now. That's why they're doing that. And I said, well, we can debate that when you're on show. But please, everyone, have a look and see what your eyes are telling you. Joe's right, and maybe analytics has changed everything and people are going safer. But I'd like to say, what is the best brand of rugby if you watch one after each other? Which I might do later on for the show, a bit of thing. I'll try and watch one and then watch one from last year and tell me what's the better product. And I'll pick the same teams at the same time. I think we've diluted the skill by more than you can ever believe. I think we've diluted the skill more than you ever can believe. If anybody wants to watch it, you'll be shell-shocked. Because if you went back, in most sports, what's changed? It's got faster. Do we all agree? Got fitter.
You've had to
any
get
sport.
fitter when you've got the 6 again.
No, any sport. Name any sport. What's happened? What has reproduced over the last 20, 30 years? Is there a sport that's got slower?
Well, obviously standards have improved, professional standards. Fitness.
And technology's improved, and fitness levels improved, and protein and thing are the same. So every game in the world's got faster. But I think what it's done to our game is made it a faster brand of rugby. I don't know whether it's took that bit of edge of the skill.
Well, that's what most. I don't think it can ever go back. I don't know how much it could ever go back with a change of look. I don't know how much difference that would make, because you look at like something like basketball, where they've changed all these rules, and then now basketball numbers, sadly, it's probably what are going down. The viewing figures are going down for NBA. And that's because they've because analytics have become that strong, and people have realised, well, only layups and 3-pointers, like any mid-range skill, the Allen Iverson's gone, the people doing things but not being high percentage, completely gone. So it's made a more boring brand of basketball.
Which is what Rugby League is.
But it's not going to go back now, because why would you go back? Because you won't win if you go back. You'll lose. A couple of teams have tried it. Memphis tried it. A couple of them have gone, let's go too big, mate. Let's try these other things that have worked in the past. They don't work anymore because the sport's improved. But sadly, it's made the product a bit less entertaining. So what do you do? Oh, let's turn it back. But then the teams that try do offloads of things won't win. But then then it's more attractive.
But rugby union's worked, hasn't it? Rugby union, if you think about rugby union, Mick and Joe, Sam, if you watch rugby union in the 90s, And I used to watch Dusty Air and all that. It would all kick and clap. It would all kick in. You'd have line out, scrums. That were it. There were no play. There were very few plays apart from if you're lucky enough to watch Wales or the British Lions. That then you got to see something. But they made it a better brand by having less at the ruck. They made it a faster brand. They made it, Rugby League had a big hand in that, I'm sure, in the crossover, taking Rugby League players over to Union. When they did, it had a massive impact, Jason Robinson and all that.
Yeah, the coach.
They seem to have improved their watching them. I don't. If you watch them 80s Rugby Union games, you'd be absolutely shell-shocked at times.
Maybe the analytics suggest we're actually playing this. Not horrendous. I found it very boring to watch, but maybe the analytics show, and I don't know Rugby Union enough to make this comment deeply, but show that actually this isn't working. If we actually do expand it more, pass the ball more, it will equal more tries, more play. Where obviously
well, that's where your nightmare, isn't it? Because that's when you've started to look over at Rugby League. You're not seeing the characters involved in the game anymore. You're seeing these guys with glasses on, and I'm not against glasses, by the way, Mick. But and Sam, he's like, you're seeing these guys, professor types with the laptop, and they're running to coach, and they're feeding information in.
That's whereas every before, sport in the world.
Yeah. Whereas before, that'd be somebody who had a great pair of eyes, assistant coach, say, here, swap him for him. They're not playing down that side, and they'd see it. Now they're saying, no data tells you, and it's that other person, isn't it? These analytics guys are becoming more important.
But
on the back of all this, I'm going to throw some in it. I want to ask you both today, and we can do a separate segment on it. And Sam can plug this here already. I give it a good thought last couple of days. And Mick, you're going to hate what I'm going to tell you next. It's probably the worst thing I've said to you since I met you. And believe me, I've said some things to you in the past when you've got me angry. But I'm going to say another one to you now. Is it the end? Should we all admit that the Challenge Cup is no longer a brand for Rugby League? Now, let me just finish. I was brought up, and everybody where I'm from were brought up on the Challenge Cup. It was bigger. Joe won't remember this. The John Player, Mick, you'll remember it.
Yeah, I remember
the competition were different. It were called the John, and they did it. It were like a playoff, but only in foot. It were all different concepts. It wasn't as big as the Challenge Cup. When I owned Doncaster, when we got a Widnes at home, it earned more money than I did all season. So I want you all to work that out. Probably a lot of my games, the Widnes game, when we got to last 32, was as big for us commercially and financially than anything. I think we got 2,000 odd. We did get all pre-season 3,000, but it was massive for us. You just said about clubs being skint. Historically, clubs always waited for Challenge Cup game and dreamt to get in Saints, Wigan, Cass, Wakey, Bradford coming. It was jackpot. They could earn as much as 60,000 on a game, and it kept them going all year. Correct? And the other thing that kept money coming in them days would have been the transfers. Somebody might have a good player and they sold him. But Challenge Cup, would you say, Mick, historically has been the payday for Rugby League for all the years?
In the lower leagues, yeah.
Is it now? They've already put in the Super League clubs in at a certain thing because they think it's a waste of time. I've watched 6 Challenge Cup finals. I've watched 2 or 3 at the new Wembley. I've watched them at Cardiff, I believe. No, would it have been Cardiff, the Challenge Cup? 1 year?
Depends what year, yeah.
Yeah, I've watched it at old Wembley. Does IMG come in and strike luck and say, look, that new competition we're going to try and get, whether it's a Champions League in Europe, Champions League in England or Dubai, do we scrap the Challenge Cup, Mick, yes or no? Is it now something you look forward to?
Well, IMG have said that they're going to restore the value of the Challenge Cup. That's why they've got rid of the Magic Weekend and the Summer Bash. Fundamentally, if you want my honest answer, what's happened wrong with the Challenge Cup is they moved it. And if you remember, I'm going back to probably late 90s, early 1000s. The Challenge Cup historically started in January, February. The final was always in May, the May bank holiday.
True. That's a great point.
So when the season starts, you'd have a couple of pre-season friendlies. Yeah. And historically, I'm going back to when I was a fan on the terraces. Your first couple of games were always Challenge Cup games.
Meaning you're a journalism now and, you're a bit...
No, I'm talking about away from broadcasting and commentating on radio and all the other stuff I end up doing during the season. But fundamentally, the first sort of competitive games where someone's on the line are those Challenge Cup games. And there'd be some great crowds there. And yes, everybody was in the hat. at that sort of third round, and you'd have your Leeds, your Bradford, your Saints, your Wigans, and everybody would be excited. Potentially, you know, your Keighley's and your Wakefields back then, you know, potentially getting a Keighley, you know, Keighley potentially getting a Leeds or a Saints. So, but, you know, fundamentally what's happened, in my opinion, is because they've moved around with the dates, and then they've moved it back to pushed it later in the year to August, July. That's then clashing with the grand final. And historically, before the concept of the grand final, the rugby league season, I know we were in the winter season then, now we're in the summer, you know, it would always climax with that Challenge Cup final. But even still, you look at the switch early, sort of first 10, 15 years of Super League, you know, that Challenge Cup final still was, it still had that attraction. It was still an attractive rugby league asset. I think the big issue now, and the RFL do know this, and IMG do know this, because of what's happened with the Super League split and Robert Elston and everything, what that did has done more damage in terms of your fan base to your clubs outside of Super League, because it has alienated a lot of people, a lot of supporters. And if rugby league is to grow and be successful, then it has to work on rebridging that, because in the past, and you might not have picked this up, but I've been to enough Challenge Cup finals, you'd have seen Hunslet fans there, Halifax fans, York fans. Those types of people still go, but not in the numbers that they used to do, because a lot of people have been alienated by it all. And what I'm trying to say is, Craig, the Challenge Cup final this coming year will be between two of the top Super League teams. You know, it'd be an absolute miracle if a Toulouse, a Featherstone, an Halifax, a York, a Barrow were to get there. So,
but Mick, historically, when we used to go to Wembley, have you been to Wembley, Joe, to a Challenge Cup final? Mick, have you been to a Challenge Cup final?
I've commentated on them, yeah.
Right, is if you go, in the olden days, Wembley was the mecca of stadiums, correct? So the old stadiums in the 90s and the early 2000s, to go to Wembley were a day out, and it were to go into the best, what we considered the best historic stadium in the world. Agree? Mm-hmm. Your problem is now, is New Wembley's location-wise is not where we should go as a sport. It's just not, Mick. New Wembley is not for our sport now. Our sport is mainly, and whether we like it or not, it's mainly Lancashire and Yorkshire, okay? The stadiums at our clubs alone now are every bit as good as any big stadium in the world. I'll dare to tell anybody, Headingley Stadium is as good as any stadium in the world. Whereas before, if you had a stadium and you got to Wembley, you couldn't believe you got to Wembley Stadium. Do you think actually as a player and a supporter going to Wembley now, when I've had the experience of dropping off at Wembley, walking down Wembley Way, it's just not all that no more. It's just not all that. There's probably 5 clubs, Warrington, Saints. These stadiums are unbelievable, aren't they? If you go to Warrington Stadium, you look round. Whereas before, where did they play it before at the Warrington?
What do you mean?
What were the old ground stadium?
Wilderspool.
I've sat at Wilderspool. If you got to Wembley, it was like going to a 5-star hotel to Wilderspool, which were a 1-star. The problem is now is, in my opinion, for the actual format of it is, Warrington Stadium's every bit as good as anything you'll get. So even your day out's been diluted, even your day out as a supporter. If I said to you tomorrow, put the Challenge Cup at Ellen Road or Old Trafford, would you prefer that, yes or no?
No.
Or you've still got the historical feel of Wembley Stadium?
Yes, because it's ingrained in history, Craig. It's heritage.
Right.
The challenge for the sport is...
Mick, there's no round Wembley. What do you do at Wembley?
That's not to change... that's not going to change the
Challenge Cup final, historically...
You are, you're joking.
No,
Craig.
no, miles...
What, so having 48, 50,000 in a 100,000 seater looks a spectacle. It looked... For the last 6, 7 years, I've been there. It's horrendous. There's empty seats everywhere.
Wembley... Being brutally honest, Wembley is too big. It is too big.
It's crazy.
The RFL are contracted there till the end of 27. So we're there for at least the next 4 years.
Go, Joe, and you'll talk. You go and have a day. You know, around Wembley, historically and all, I don't know if you know this, apart from now, they're trying to get you to the stadium where the prices are all there, so they're wanting you all there, which is rightly so. The olden days, you'd go and hit 10 pubs, you'd make your way there, all the coaches from every town.
I've been to Wembley.
Yeah, every town would get a coach, you'd go and they'd stop at all boozers, wouldn't you, mate?
Yeah, but Craig, this is what I'm trying to say, because there's been that alienation, You're not getting your Hunslet, your Featherstone, your Bradford, your Halifax, your Rochdales, your Oldham. I know
There's not a
some will
large
say-
supporter fan. There's not the diehard fans as much as there used to be that all drive down to the Challenge Cup.
So
That's
why
the
would you not
issue.
make it? Would they not? You were saying they won't go with them
Craig,
an hour away.
You don't understand what I'm saying.
No, because they don't. Do
Craig,
they?
you don't understand
They
what I'm
don't,
saying.
Summer Bash
Because
got less views.
of what's
No,
happened.
I'm about taking the Challenge Cup, say to Newcastle. Would that get 60,000?
Well, Newcastle doesn't hold 60,000.
How much it hold?
52.
Right. Would we get 52,000?
I think what'll
Sell
happen.
out.
I think what'll happen in 27, the RFL, along with IMG, will have a massive headache. Do you stay at Wembley? I think Wembley's too big.
No, we don't sell out 52.
because-
See, we've got to look at Old Trafford. I don't think we'd.
Because
Old Trafford 70.
Yeah, but what do we get at Old Trafford?
76.
How many tickets do we sell at Old Trafford?
Well, the grand final doesn't sell out.
Exactly.
62,000 this year.
Exactly. So no, I think
That's
we
where
struggle.
rugby league is, Craig. Sadly, we are in a dying sport in terms of fan base. And we've discussed this on this show for a number of years. I compare rugby league in this country to baseball in America. We've missed a generation. There'll be a whole generation of young people who are currently growing up who don't even know rugby league exists. And this is the challenge now for Super League clubs and IMG. And again, I go back to that split. I don't want to keep going about Robert Elston and the split, but that split did so much damage, because if they'd have stayed together, all them Super League clubs, Craig, would have been on ROI, growing the sport. Because I tell you what, I won't name names, but if you're a Super League club and you're then getting squeezed for 50% of 1.7, are you serious? They're going to rest on your laurels and not do any improvement? You're not, are you? And that's what it was all about.
Yeah, but it's
ROI.
not like exactly. But then if you look at the Championship clubs, some of them have. So I'm not doing. You know what I mean? I'm not. But how many of them have made massive improvements to?
Well,
Not many.
Well, I'll challenge that, Joe. When you've got to work with what you're getting, which is an ever more decreasing amount of money,
Because of ROI.
Bravo to the... Yeah, but the RFL have brought ROI in. They brought it in to raise the standards.
And it hasn't in the Championship, has it? That's my point. It hasn't raised.
Well, I think I'll challenge you on that, and I'll say the Championship is even after Bradford's diabolical year last year, the Championship is the best it's been in a number of years, and I'll challenge that.
Well, Jimmy Mack would certainly agree with you, wouldn't he?
I'll challenge that. Super League's got stale. For me, the Championship...
But where are the numbers to back that up? The numbers don't back that up. If it has as a diehard fan, it is. But
Joe, listen,
the fan bases aren't growing at the Championship. The TV views.
Yeah, but it's
aren't
whether they're
up.
growing. What's Mick might be saying is that, but they're not decreasing at the amount the others are.
Well, look, in the Championship next year,
If the old game's decreasing, then it's
all
whoever's decreasing the least where you'd say the most successful.
Who is decreasing the least then?
Let's look at the Championship. So York's crowds have doubled pretty much year on year.
Yeah.
Barrows have doubled considerably. Bradford are still the best supported club, even after last year's shit show, where I think they won 4 times at home. Lee, last year in the Championship, their crowds went up.
Well, I guess.
I'm just saying, Keighley, they're in the Championship this year. Their crowds are going to go up. There's a lot of success in the Championship. The crowds are going up. The standards are being raised. I'm just saying, ROI, and the point I wanted to say at the start of the show still stands. If you'd ROI'd the Super League clubs, the game wouldn't be in this mess, because they wouldn't have just been taking the money, like you say, Craig. We'll take 1.6, we'll spend 1.1, 1.2 on squad, and like IMG said at the press launch, they know some of these Super League clubs, they've been then sitting on 300k, 400k, perhaps that's a little bit extreme, but they've been taking the full cap, full central funding, and they've not been spending it in the squad, Craig, which is why, and IMG have said this, there will be a minimum salary cap spend. If you want to be a top tier club, you're spending that full cap. So the challenge to the clubs now, and I know Salford don't spend full, we know Cast don't, we know Wakefield don't, we know there's a number of clubs that don't spend full. You're not a top tier club if you're not spending that full cap. Because IMG, quite rightly, that has devalued the product, Craig.
I love what we're talking about. I just think that if IMG, and this is a message to him from the full 80 with We are one of the most successful podcasts.
I'll be honest, there was a meeting last week, Craig, and
nothing come out.
Be honest.
I don't want them to shoot me because
No.
I think sometimes I'm going to get shot off IMG one day and they'll say, well, I'm not being negative. I just wish you'd spell out exactly in more English. It could do an open press conference and it could do with what the direction of the game is and break it down. Even come on a podcast. That is a challenge for your IMG. Come on a podcast. Go on. I suppose you'd be told by the Rugby League to go on a certain one and that maybe not dare come on here because Mick can rinse most people if they come on. But I would say go on a few podcasts because that's where the world's going. It's podcast mad. People are wanting to watch YouTube. People are going to get on a podcast with the top people and let somebody ask you 50 questions so the people of Rugby League can understand what's going off. Because that's what happened with Robert Elston. No one understood. And Robert, remember when we used to say, Robert, come on programme? How many weeks did we do it for? Robert, it's an open invitation. He never once dared go near it. He was thinking, I'm not going near that.
the best Robert. I think I've told this story before. The best Robert Elston is when I'd just been down to 24-hour Tesco. It's a Thursday night. It's 11:15. Phone rings. Hello. Have you got a problem with me?
Me, yeah, put it on here, didn't he?
Robert Elston phoned me up. Have you got a problem with me? Honestly, I spoke to a couple of chairmen on the back of that, and they said, if he's seriously phoning you up and asking, because he'd seen all the negativity on the show, he'd seen all the negativity on Twitter, he's like, what on earth? But no, seriously, look, I like Matt Dwyer at IMG.
Yeah, but that's what can we not get Matt? Here's the thing, get on a show and let people ask you where the game's going and let's get into it. If you don't know, first time in our history, transparency is key. If you don't know where we're going and you're still working it out, say that. We don't know where we're going yet. We need to look at... But please get somebody from IMG on some type of platform. Why would you be scared of coming on? What you know, when Robert won't come on, I used to sit there and think, I think we might challenge Roger Draper to come on or whatever. But over years, we've done it. You know, if you said that to me, I'd be straight on. I'd be like, come on then, Mick. And I'd want to sit here. We asked Nigel Wood to come on for years. Absolutely no chance. I saw Nigel in his garden. He goes, well, I'll have a think about it. They watched the show, but they won't dare come on and get it on. You know, IMG, it'd be the most revolutionary thing ever if they actually did say, look, we're willing to do a podcast. Get all the Rugby League fans to know, if you want to know what's going to go off in the game, it's going to be here for 2 hours. And they could even do a live debate with Rugby League fans asking questions, Jay. It'd be amazing, wouldn't it? It'd change the game forever.
The worrying thing...
Because you know Dana White, this is the difference, Joe, isn't it? Dana White sits there and goes, what? Ask me.
No, he doesn't. He gets slaughtered for that.
He gets aggressive.
No,
is he the most open promoter the world's ever had?
No, because he doesn't.
Are you kidding me?
You're not. You don't do your research on him. Dana White's getting slaughtered now more than anything.
No, because he controls the journalists.
He picks which journalists are, which they are, so he doesn't.
Historically, to get the sport going, was he the most open promoter of all time? They've never had a promoter actually answer questions like he did. It never happened at any other organisation. Imagine Sepp Blatter with what Dana did to build
15 years ago.
No. Then that, you know what I'm on about. FIFA, have we ever had a debate with FIFA when who's the gaffer of Premier League football?
Exactly.
We need to know, don't we?
I should know.
It's time to know, innit?
I think it might be a lady.
The way the world's going, bring them on and get them on. Don't you think so?
No.
Sam, who's the Ralph Frimmer? Oh, I should say the Tony Sutton of the Premier League. It changes that, I say. I don't think we need to know that anyway, Craig. We don't need to know that.
Get them on and get some transparency. If I was the gaffer of IMG, I promise you, I'd say we're going to do a massive live debate on the biggest show you can get me, the biggest platform, and I'd allow everybody, and I'd say this is where we're going with it, because we've had too many years of no transparency in our sport.
I don't think that brings any. I don't think that brings a lot more fans in either way.
It would.
It wouldn't.
The takeaway from last week is
Eddie Hearn and Dana White are the most pivotal promoters in the world at getting out there and getting in your face. They're the two biggest.
Craig, Joe.
Who's the richest individual people in sport? Them two.
But that's because they own a company. That's completely different.
And they promote their sport.
No, it's not.
Dana, who's UFC? Dana is UFC. MMA.
Exactly, because he owned it up until obviously.
But we brought IMG to do the same thing.
They don't own it.
They do. They own a stake in ours.
Yeah, they own a little stake, but it's not. That's Dana was.
What you brought him in for then? Tell them what you brought IMG in for then.
Not to do a podcast on this. I know you're trying to set up big podcasts for
no, to do with us. Forget about it. I want IMG to come out and for once be in people's faces. I want to see a Dana White and Eddie Hearn. I'm sick
I've
to death.
thought about this because we spoke about it a lot, and I don't think we need them to act. And we know we need decisive, but we don't need a Dana White character. I don't think we do. I don't think we need a Dana. We need action, and we need something to happen. But we don't need a Dana White character.
Let me inform you. We've had Richard Lewis, who was not a people's person.
Correct.
Not against him. I met Richard quite a few times. Absolutely lovely bloke, but definitely not a people's person. Paper, and he were always just done there. You know, if you're going to get a trophy to somebody, Richard would stand up and he'd be there. That's the last time you'd see him. You'd never see him anywhere else in any grounds.
Correct.
Nigel Wood were actually probably more of a rugby league fan, anorak came into the sport. But then Nigel, as would have been told then, was known as let's be honest, his style was very as a negotiator behind the scenes, making things happen. Transparency, definitely want Nigel's format in his period in the game. It was very good behind the curtain.
Why? Explain to me why this generates more fans. That's the bit. Why does this generate a massive load of more? It makes our current fans happier, 100%. You know what I mean? If we do have one, I'll give you that. It makes our fans who are watching it now will be happier with someone there. We can, and a bit of transparency, a bit of honesty. Boom. We're all happy.
Well, the game's
Why
going.
does that bring a load? How does that bring a load more fans into the sport? That's what I'm missing.
Because there's a word called direction, and suddenly this guy who's actually, if you get somebody who's actually got a face, who actually is driving the game forward and saying, "Come with me."
The IMG aren't going to do that. They're not going to have a face. They're not.
Well, they've not done it in any other one.
Craig, fundamentally, what I wanted to say to you is, when there's these meetings like last week, and you're hearing from Super League chairman, I hear it all the time. League One, Championship. There's nothing. They're sat at the back of the room with a clipboard and pen. Does that not worry you? Does that not worry you where the state of the game is?
All worries me.
Because that's fundamentally what the issue is here. Is everyone's saying it the same to me at Champion League One. IMG do not realise the state of the game. Not saying
we said it 2 months ago.
I'm not saying they've bit enough more than I'm not saying they've bit enough more than they can chew, because, like you've quite rightly said, Joe, IMG they've had success with table tennis, ping pong, a number of other sports, But I genuinely am concerned, and it's a cautious concern, Craig, that I don't want to keep going on about the club that had the £6 in the bank and the club that can't afford the school or the community centre, so they're trading in a farmer's barn currently, but. What sort of,
Do you know when IMG first rang myself, that lad? I've never seen him since. I don't think he's part of the new regime, but somebody from IMG has to contact me, didn't he? The reason he said he wanted to talk to me is because of the show. He also said that you tell the truth, you dare say it.
We do tell the truth.
And he said, I've noticed that not a lot of people dare in this game. So and I'm quoting him here, so please, this is what we said. We said about he loves the ideas, he thought were a great format, but we also talk honestly. And he said, a lot of people in the game trust your opinions. So that was 3 years ago. He then asked me for an hour and a half questions. It was fantastic, in my opinion, what he did, because when you're going to buy a company out, I've had a company that got bought out, you can get all the figures you can, but actually you're better off asking janitor. So what actually happens in this company? And
you're best off asking the people on the floor who live and breathe it.
100%. So the problem is with IMG, they probably had all the paperwork given by everybody, and everyone's telling, hey, these windows are lovely, everything's there, and all of a sudden, where it actually should have been asked, IMG should have got the people and asked the opposite side of the fence, who could have gone, actually, this is what's happening.
Well, they did, didn't they? They come in, then asked. I think, obviously, that's the wrong way you argued, but I guess if you argued if they did that before, they probably wouldn't have come in.
No, we all got set a format. I think we did get someone from RFL to fill in a load of things where we could improve the game, and that we're going to go to IMG.
No, IMG did it with the fans.
Yeah.
They have done what you
said. They have the fan survey.
They've done it with the fans. They've done it at every level. It's too late.
It was too late because they'd already come in and invested and done the deal.
Yeah, but to be honest, I say that's a godsend, because if they did it before, they wouldn't have come in and invested, would they? If they knew,
they hadn't invested. They hadn't put no money in.
Well, invested, but they're investing their time, which is massive.
Look, first and foremost, I want this to be a success. I live and breathe rugby league, as do you. We want the sport to grow. We want it to get back to 40 million. The TV deal. We then want the next TV deal to be like 50, 56, 60 million. We want the sport to grow. I'm just saying, Craig, fundamentally, IMG, they just seem to be because this isn't a deal where they are contractually obliged to be putting loads of money in. Yes, there's time, but there's no money. And because of where the sport is, the onus is on the clubs. And no disrespect to some of the people who run a rugby league club in this country.
No,
there are some very good people. There's some, but as
Oh,
we
there's
know,
nowhere
we know, there are some down there.
As an industry, you'd be terrified. If IMG have said, you go and grow this sport, and if I looked at my army, and I'm going to fight, I'm fighting in the war, and I look at my army, if they know their army, they'd be terrified. I'm telling you, lads, probably need to leave this at the moment, because if I was looking out at my army, like Napoleon or whatever, I'd be like, he's not going to help me. He's not going to help me. He's not good enough. You know,
the thing we've got to be
you'd be terrified.
The thing we've got to be petrified for as a sport, don't we? Is if IMG come in, and obviously I don't think they will do this. Just putting that out there before I get into it. We've got to be petrified that if they come in and then for a year or two it's not a success, and then they just leave us with a no TV deal, no nothing after it not working because they've not put any money in. That's what I'm worried, because if they're not putting money in, it is easier to leave, isn't it? That's the issue we might have down the road.
It is, but let's say they're picking up £2 million costs a year, so over 3 years.
I was just going to say, Craig, when we say
but I think there'd be a lot of companies.
They're not putting money in here you go, RFL is 10 million, and they're putting the money in the time and the
Do you know
resources.
what, Mick? There'd have been a lot of companies at that
that's still
time.
a lot easier, isn't it?
There's been a lot of companies at that time who looked at the Sky deal and said, right, if you give me X amount of percent of that Sky deal, if I can go and put infrastructure into your sport, which we think we can, and that Sky deal, bet I get a kickback on that. Yeah. You probably got loads. IMG, we've thought we've gone for the biggest. What Joe media outlet, the biggest they're a promotions company. They promote they're an agent.
Yeah.
So I thought, why Joe's telling me I'm wrong, I thought they would come out and be transparent, and you'd see the faces, and they'd come and say, this is what we are. We are promoters. We're going to give it some. I'm scared we're going back to the old behind the curtain. If you'd got the great IMG in, what we've read about them, but then I thought the behind the curtain had stopped. I thought they'd open the curtain and say, here we are.
No, I mean, look,
follow us
for
now.
Fans,
you know what? You know what I want, personally? I want someone to come out and say, I work for IMG, this is my team, follow us, winner takes points at best place ever. Positivity. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do this. I'd be following them throughout. I'm sick of 30 years of behind the curtain. And just pop their head up and say, yeah, read our agenda. You know, how has Rugby League been run for 30 years on votes? It's been run on votes. And how's them votes been shared out? By manipulating certain agendas they wanted through and manipulating certain agendas. 25 people in a room, if you vote for this, we'll give you £20,000 a piece. If you vote for B, there's nothing. That's how we've done it. We all know. Anybody who's been involved in how the Rugby League were run.
You've told the tale enough times, Craig.
Best story ever.
The RFL put the free bar on.
Unbelievable.
They said, here's 20 grand. So again, the RFL manipulated that course of where the game went.
It was without doubt. It was, and even when they sold something they wanted through, it was so thorough. The presentation were there and all the owners are there, and it was fantastic. But then Group B, C, and D were like, if you fancy this, it was small print.
No, I shouldn't laugh because I'm not clued up in sports administration. I mean, does this happen at the FA?
Mick,
does this happen at the ECB?
No, Mick.
Does this happen at the RFU?
I'll give you
does
another
Bill
one.
Sweeney sit in front of all
No,
those
RFU don't have,
clubs?
the clubs don't have the power we have. No, RFU have more power than the clubs. In our game, the clubs have the power. So the clubs will have a lot more say. But let me tell you this. We've also done, when we were in COVID, we did online things from the RFL. And this is me being respectful. Some lovely people at the RFL been fantastic with me and my company. Absolutely fantastic. We've not had a lot of help with full 80, but one day we might, Mick. But anyway, I did a lot of them. And what they do is they bring Karen Morehouse on, or whoever it is. Before that, it was I'm trying to think of the lady's name.
Emma Rosewell.
Not Emma. Emma was a big mate of mine. Anyway, another lady come on, and what they'd do is, so you'd look up and they'd be, let's just say it's the agents' day. So there'd be all agents there, and half the agents wouldn't even flick the screen on. So there'd be about 2 faces you'd see, and I can say, where are you? I'm thick going, where's everybody? And they're behind the counter, but they're online, but they're not showing the face. So they're obviously fried bacon and going for Jim. I had a couple of weights being put down. I thought, here we go. You are then thrust into 2 hours of agendas. how does this suit you? And I've done the meetings at Manchester, and they'll sit there. The minute you put your hand up, you are absolutely no chance. The minute my hand went up, oh, bloody hell, it's Craig again. Honestly, I saw it. And if you say, why, if you challenge anything, it was Craig, we're going to get through this. We're trying to get through this when we got 12 hours. So it were openly saying to you, keep your mouth shut, don't say much. And I've got to be honest here, some of the presentation was that uninspiring. There's no wonder. I were left for 1 hour with one person on there. Guess who it was? Me. On 1 hour. On the last one, there might have been two of us. And I was sat there thinking, I'm listening to a presentation, and then they bring somebody else in presentation. But it was done not to have... Do you know what minutes are in a meeting? Do you know what they are?
Yes, you recorded.
So somebody's recording it. What they didn't want is somebody to give any minutes. It was like, last thing we need is Sam putting his hand up and saying, actually, I'm not happy with this, because they had to go in minutes. And if it's in the minutes, it has to be discussed. Get me? So it's done to go... I'm hoping that I would probably... My dream's gone wrong. Joe's pissed on me fighter. I was dreaming that IMG were the ones who were going to come and do it different.
They clearly haven't, have they? That's what we're...
So that's killed me. You know, that if you want to give me a negative for next week, he's done it. That's done it. Because I'm thinking, and you've done it, because I'm thinking we've got this promised land and these people, and I wanted it to happen. And I'm terrified now that you're saying no.
What evidence were there that they would do that?
I thought just being a promoter and agents, that's what they do.
But they don't do it for they help their own clients, but they don't come out and say, they promote their own people.
That's probably they don't know how our sport needs that, doesn't it? You said that you've started the show with leadership. It needs somebody.
Definitely yeah.
Like I say, for people watching this, I say Matt Dwyer. People are like, who's Matt? But Matt Dwyer was the person who gave the presentation to us. Well, the 2 times we went to Manchester to do the media conference, he was there from IMG.
And they've done that for you to then go and tell the people, haven't they?
Yeah.
And you're supposed to tell people what you see.
And like I've told people, the slides, Simon, I'd love, one thing I might actually ask the RFL, I don't know if they'll allow it, is if I can get hold of that IMG presentation and, I don't know how we do it. We might have to do it on the old Facebook Live, but put the slides up one by one. And then
I bought a green screen. We can have it. That can be our first green screen.
And then talk about it. I'll get on to the RFL about that.
That'd be great. Do you know what?
It's if they'll give us the slides, because we can, we can't manipulate the slides. We can only report what is on them slides. Like it'll show you about the homegrown quota. They're wanting homegrown players, so there's going to be a minimum, a rule for minimum homegrown players, which is going to affect Catalans and Toulouse.
This is the thing, Mick, even with that, and I want to finish on that, so leave that straight there, but even on that, I got asked the other day, I tried to listen to, after a game, when you've done this 1,000 times, when the journalists get invited in the room to speak to the coach?
Yeah, the post-match press conference.
Post-match. Yes. I've started watching a few just to get a feel of it, so when we're on this show, I can talk about it. The main people who ask the least crap questions get the most time. It's same as RFL. I'd have said that as me being an agent. Does that make sense to you? So you have 15 journalists. I think he said to me the other day there were 12 in. And the one person who asked the least political question. So if they've got beat 20-0 and you say, first question should be, so what happened there then? That's the one who will get the least time. The one who says, hey, I think that went bad. It's pre-season. I can understand. They get to run the things. Now that is does that happen in journalism, Mick?
That happens in every sport.
Yes.
There's not one sport that you can.
Is that why you're about Dana with the guy with the glasses? He don't like him because he asks the worst questions, or is he just negative?
No. Dana literally bans people and then has his own ones that always ask the correct question, so Dana can see.
I hate that because I got told that other day off a journalist, and I said, why is this certain journalist getting all the toffee? He says because he asked the least political question. Your
one aspect where it doesn't, I think, off the top of my head in sports is NBA have quite a few countries where they get mad at each other. Players have famously, there's been numerous ones where the players have gone and walked off FU. But there's not many sports that I can think of off the top of the head that really challenge.
Look,
that's crazy.
I'm going to speak from a personal experience here. So, as a broadcaster, as a journalist, you do need to keep those relationships up.
Oh, but that's what they said. That's exactly what they said.
No, you do. You do.
Don't ask anything.
So, if, for instance, you've watched 2 rugby league teams and one of them's been beaten 50-0, yes, it's a horrendous result. but you can't really go to town on the coach.
Do you know what?
You've got that relationship.
Do you know why?
I always remember Workington come to Odsall, beat Bradford in 2018 in the league, and I said to John, very famously, they had to delete it, and I said to John ahead of a potential, this was the journalist in me, this was the broadcaster in me, I was like thinking, this is a very good question. No, I think the question was this, John, you've gone up to Workington, you've lost to Workington have now come to Odsall and beat you, does this defeat today now give them a psychological edge ahead of any playoff meeting? And John basically told me to fuck off. And he didn't speak to me for a week. But everybody in that room thought that was a very honest and fair question.
Well, that's where probably I would never make a journalist, because I'm with you, and I'd even confront John and say, "What the fucking hell? Sorry for swearing. Why would you not listen to that? That has got to be the most transparent question." The reason I'm even saying this, I watched one a couple of weeks ago, and I'm still a bit gobsmacked at who got the toffee. One journalist got the mic, he's saying no, and it was like doing your garden.
Which sport are we talking about?
Rugby league.
What game's this?
No, I'm not going to say it because you get it, but it's like, how's your garden? How's the lawn? Everything all right there? Lovely. It's a great day. And I'm listening thinking, have you just watched what I've watched? So you should be asking the opposite questions. This guy got 85% of the mic.
Wow.
And there were 8 other journalists only got half a question. And I watched one question go in, it got shut down quicker than you could shut anything down, and I went, oh my God. This again why the sport is as it is.
Was this the coach shutting him down?
Yeah. He didn't want it. And he looked at him as if saying it, what you've just said so real. He looked at him to say, his eyes said, one more bad question and you will not be watching me. It was done, and I thought, that's pathetic. And then we got somebody again who was just saying, the weather's nice, lovely day out there, the food were great. I think, you know what? I think everybody enjoyed it. It's a bit like the big things that happen in rugby league. I'll give you.
Name a sport where that's not the case.
I think loads, but I'll
go on then.
Well,
I'm sure Fergie, when he was manager of Man United, he had his favourites.
That's most
Ferguson
sport.
says always report honesty. He went mad at him, didn't he? He said, if you lie, I'll have you. As long as you're honest and your opinions, I don't mind. But do not put lies. If you put lies, you won't be allowed in this. That's what he said. We don't mind honesty. But this is the thing with that, Mick. Again, with the press, we all need to be more transparent to help the sport. Do you know press conferences? They should be brilliant, shouldn't they? They should be. It used to be exciting, Mourinho, I loved it when Mourinho went. We've never had this in our sport when Mourinho went. 4 titles. It got 10 million views when he said to that journalist, I've won more Premier League than all these put together. Slammed hand down and went, and I was like, we've no chance of that because ours don't even ask a question.
Yeah, but Craig, I know what you're saying and I agree, but, was that when he was manager of Chelsea or Man U? You're talking...
Man U.
You're talking dedicated media rooms. Some of the grounds at Super League, you stood on a corridor, Craig. You're not going to get that. Well,
you better have done it Zoom then, haven't you? If that's the case then,
that's how
sure.
Leeds do it on Zoom, don't they?
On Zoom.
It's been the full 80 minutes on Show Me the Money Rugby League TV. Don't forget, coming up later on this week and into next week and the weeks ahead, there's more Super League ins and outs. We will be doing a championship preview. That might also run for 2 hours. We don't know yet, but we're going to look at every championship club. And we're also going to do a League One preview show. So those will be 2 separate things. But yeah, as always is the case, thank you for watching us and spending some time with us. Once again, Happy New Year. All the best. And yeah, let's hope 2023 is a great year for the sport of rugby league. Over to you, IMG.